In reality, there should always be free time in our schedules. That might sound like a crazy statement to someone who has been in this productivity mindset for a while. If you're watching this, I'm guessing that you've probably been pushing yourself really hard recently. You're probably exhausted, burnt out, in need of a holiday, in need of help. If that is you, I just want to say I see you, and I'm sorry that life has just dealt you a difficult hand of cards recently. But I also want to say that it can get better, and it will get better, and that there are things that you can work through that I think can help you put better boundaries in place and identify when you're beginning to get run down. So let's just set the scene for a second so we can agree on the facts. We live in a world where worth equals work. Your value as a human being is measured by how much you can produce, your output, the quality and quantity, and that is not normal. We are not robots. We are not machines. We have machines that are willing to steal our jobs, and yet we're still expected to work above and beyond what is really physically reasonable. Go figure. And not only that, but because of our technological age, we are expected to be switched on and available 24/7. Work and life merge together, social, alone merge together, and that's a really frustrating experience because it shouldn't have to be that way, and yet we put pressure on ourselves to be in that status quo, to keep up with the pace. And that's the thing, resting, slowing down, admitting your humanity, your weakness, is actually an act of resistance. It's an incredibly brave thing to do, to say, hey, I need help. I can't exist in this status quo anymore. This is an area of my life that I've had to become very attuned to, because before I started noticing the signs, I was completely unaware of it. It's funny, I've caught myself saying, you're not as productive as you used to be. How come you haven't done more this week? When you were 18, you could get this much done and now you can only get this much done? Or why are you so exhausted? Other people have way more taxing and demanding jobs and you're sitting here unable to function? Come on, pull your weight, woman. I guess in many ways, our brains aren't always kind to us when it comes to this conversation. And I think it's so important to be in tune with our bodies and in tune with our brains and just where we are at, because if we don't do that, our quality of life seriously struggles and suffers. It's only July, and this year I have been sick 5 times. None of them were serious. It was just the flu and just feeling generally really run down. But that is not normal. And the only time I would realize that I was pushing myself too hard was when I got sick. And it really struck me, and it really made me have to evaluate my life choices, the things I was committing to. There didn't seem to be a way for me to preempt myself getting sick or getting burnt out or run down, because I didn't know what the signs to look out for were. And so I want to share those with you and some of the signs and symptoms that you might be pushing yourself a little bit too hard, so that you have a helpful litmus test, and so we can treat ourselves with a little bit more kindness and compassion. The first sign that you're probably pushing yourself too hard, and this is so obvious, and I've already alluded to it, is you keep getting sick. Now, unfortunately, this one is not that helpful to identify, and the reason it's not helpful is because you're already sick. You're trying to prevent yourself from getting sick, from all the physiological symptoms that come along with overwhelm and pushing yourself too hard. So getting sick, let's just move on. The second sign that you're probably pushing yourself too hard is that things you used to enjoy now stress you out or are not as enjoyable to you. This is often because we get into a rhythm, we get into a mindset where our life becomes a to-do list. It becomes one thing after the next thing after the next thing after the next. And normally the things that we enjoy are not part of that system. In my life, I've often found that I love painting and drawing and making art freely. But when I get into that workspace, even though I might be painting and drawing and making art, I'm not doing it freely. And so the thought of doing that without restriction, without structure, really stresses me out, and I can't bring myself to do it because there's always something more important to do. So if you're finding yourself strangely stressed by the things you used to like, or you keep putting them off because other things keep coming up, maybe you're pushing yourself too hard. In reality, there should always be free time in our schedules. That might sound like a crazy statement to someone who has been in this productivity mindset for a while. But if you think about it, if your life is a to-do list, what is the point? What is the point of living? What is the point of sunsets and flowing streams and catching up with friends in general if there's no time to do any of those things that are beautiful? The third sign that you might be pushing yourself too hard is that you are consuming a lot more than you are creating. We have to acknowledge that the act of creation is an incredibly taxing and generous process. It requires a lot of energy, a lot of emotional availability. So if you find yourself procrastinating or consuming a lot more than you are creating, it's probably a sign that your brain just doesn't have the capacity, mentally, emotionally, etc., to create stuff. But when you are pushing yourself a healthy amount rather than extending your boundaries and extending yourself, you will find that creation is a natural process. Being still, allowing your mind to wander, being bored, naturally, if there are no distractions, leads to the act of creation. It's just a very human thing for that to happen. But these days, because we have so many distractions, it's the path of least resistance to end up on social media, to end up on Netflix and consume. So if you've been pushing yourself too hard, you probably don't have the capacity. You probably want to take that easy route, and so you're probably consuming a lot more than you're creating. Another sign that you might be pushing yourself too hard is if your emotional regulation is kind of out of whack. I have noticed this in my own life, where obviously, I might get moody or upset at really stupid things. But something else I've noticed myself doing, rather than just having like emotional outbursts and getting frustrated and like blah because I'm tired, I actually start to repress happy emotions, joy and delight, laughter, just having like a carefree time with friends. I'll stop doing all that because when I'm pushing myself too hard, I have a million different things in the back of my mind that I have to do, places I have to be, people I have to see, guilt that I'm ridden with because I haven't done all of those things I meant to do, B and C, right? It's exhausting. Maybe consider, hey, it might not be PMS, it might not be what I've eaten today, maybe it's that I'm pushing myself too hard and I'm really overwhelmed. There is actually a lady on Instagram who I will recommend somewhere here, who talks about dysregulation in like a physical sense, how when you are completely overwhelmed and you're pushing yourself too hard, you will get bruises that you don't recognize and you will feel really overstimulated by loud noises, and there's a whole bunch of physical symptoms that go along with that. I am no expert, but she is, so I will link her below just so that you're aware. Another sign that you might be pushing yourself too hard is if you've begun to feel feelings of resentment and burnout. Resentment being,
my husband, like he has it so easy. I have to do everything around here. I'm the one who's managing this and managing that. And he just comes home and all the kids love him and this and that and the other.
That's kind of a feeling of resentment. Or if you're at work,
the new employee, they get all the benefits and there's so much more praise. And I've been here, I've been working my butt off and I'm not appreciated.
That's another kind of example of resentment. Resentment comes in many forms, but if you are feeling that way, or if you're feeling burnt out and you've quiet quit at work, or you're just not bothered to put in the effort you used to because you've kind of disassociated emotionally from that stimulus, then alarm bells. You should probably consider stepping back, taking some time off, really analyzing what you currently have on your plate and asking yourself what you can get rid of and be brutal about it. Resentment and burnout only lead to conflict, poor choices, broken relationships, so definitely check in on that one. Another sign that you might be pushing yourself too hard is if you found yourself complaining more than you used to. And you will notice this if they tell you, hey, why are you complaining so much? That's a very obvious sign. But the other is if someone points out to you how blessed, how lucky, how fortunate you are, or how amazing something is in your life and you don't believe it, that could be a sign that you're doing too much. Because when you're doing too much, you rarely stop to think about how beautiful your life is, but also the details, the sun streaming through the window, the chocolate around your kid's mouth, how cute that is, the flowers blooming in the garden. All of those things just kind of become invisible in the mad rush of it all. So if you're taken aback by someone pointing out how you should be grateful or the blessings that you've received, maybe just check yourself, ask yourself, am I doing too much? Do I have enough free time? Am I taking time for gratitude, for grounding, for being present? A final kind of a sign or symptom that you might be pushing yourself too hard is if You have really strong food cravings because when we have high cortisol, our bodies will seek out and search for any food that is really high fat, really high sugar, really high energy content, because it feels like it's in danger and it feels like it has to go and sprint away from the tiger in 5 minutes time. So take stock of what kind of cravings you're getting. If you have time to prepare healthy food, or if you're just going for like the easiest snack in the cupboard, taking some time to really reflect on your food choices can be a hugely strong indicator of the capacity at which you're operating and whether you should, again, go easy on yourself. Now, as I've said, I'm not a doctor, I'm not giving advice. I'm just trying to point out, like, if you've experienced these things, I understand it's really tough when you feel like you're the only person that can do everything on your to-do list, when you feel like delegating is a waste of time because nobody's going to do it properly. I get that. I know it's not always realistic to cut down on the things that you're agreeing to, but it is important, regardless, to really be intentional about the things that you are agreeing to. Because if you're not intentional about them, you'll very quickly fall down this slippery slope of overwhelm, and you'll end up physically sick, emotionally sick, mentally sick. And then who's going to take care of your family? And then who's going to take care of you? And I just want to encourage you that if you can find 5 minutes, just 5 minutes, to pray, to give it all to God, to just say, hey, like, I'm struggling, please send me help. Or if you just want to take some time to journal and write down and really take stock of all those thoughts in your head to be able to be on top of it. What's that quote? It's like, a problem identified is a problem half solved. Yeah, if anything, this is not a rant to be like, you have to do less, but it's just a reminder to be aware of what you are doing and know the value of all the things that you're doing and what's worth it and what's not. If you enjoy conversations like this or other content on creativity, slow living, and faith, please hit that subscribe button and turn on the notifications. You know the drill, for future videos. Thank you so much for watching, guys. And yeah, I'll be hoping and praying that the next little while in your life can be a bit softer and a bit gentler than the one you're currently going through. Anyway, take care. I'll see you in the next video. Bye. I just wanted to say, as a tangent to this video, I'm so proud of myself because for a long time, my skin was just breaking out because I was so overwhelmed and so stressed. But recently I've been saying no. It's really hard for the people pleaser in me. And now my skin is so clear to the point where I feel comfortable to just film a YouTube video. I know I look a little bit tired. I know it's not perfect. But if anything, I just want this to stand as a memory on my timeline that, hey, when you are kind to yourself, when you're gentle, when your cortisol's not through the roof, there are physical benefits. So let this just be a lesson to me to go slow.